Hi, welcome to part one of Discover and Design You webinar series. I'm Holly Stokes, the brain trainer, and I help people train their brain out of old habits, patterns, negative thinking, self-sabotage, lack of motivation. All of these things are patterns wired into our brain, and the brain can learn new habits and patterns that are more supportive. And we can help our mind learn to access confidence, focus, motivation, and following through on the actions that you take in your life that will bring you the results that you like. So, the webinar, Discover and Design You, we're going to cover the key principles that help us creating effective and lasting change so that we can create the life that we want. There's several different themes that we'll cover through the course of this four-part series, and all of it really has to do with updating how we see ourselves. How we see ourselves is the very foundation of our possibilities in life, what we find the motivation to achieve and create, and everything in our life is, at some level, a reflection of these patterns and how we see ourselves. So life gets easier when you get your brain on board. And I'm going to give you the keys and principles to start making those positive changes for you so that you can live better, healthier, happier, with more success. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Discover and design you. Clarify your life purpose, mission, and vision. So we're going to jump right in today into some key principles that will help you create a more fulfilling, deeply enriching life. A good example of this comes from my own story. I had worked for about 10 years as an at-risk wilderness therapy counselor, and we would bring kids out into the woods. A lot of them were going through challenges with addiction, poor grades, drugs, alcohol, conflict with teachers, with family. And we were teaching them principles for creating positive self-esteem, creating positive communication, and being more in charge of their awareness of themselves and their emotional states. And it was very fulfilling work. However, the schedule was quite taxing. We were out in the wilderness for a week on, and then we'd have about 6 days off, and then we'd be back out again. So it was kind of challenging to keep a relationship and to stay connected with friends. So I went back to school and working on my psychology degree, and I found a summer job that I loved. And I was a whitewater raft guide, and we had a ton of fun. Taking people out on the boats every day. We were going down Deschutes Deschutes section of near Maupin in Oregon. And it was such a fun stretch. There's a class 3 and 4 rapids on there. So we had some big water, some good drops. We could dump people out on the boat, and it was still pretty safe and fun. However, about the 3rd year, I got into the sense that, yeah, it was fun, but it wasn't enough. I felt like I was called for something more. That almost in a sense, I got bored of having fun. Can you believe that? Right? So I was finishing my degree in psychology, went back and finished, and then really found the tools and skills to work with people at the internal level of changing your experience so that you could change your life. And this was so deeply satisfying and enriching for me that that's where I've been practicing the last 12 years in working with understanding the layers of the mind, creating effective and lasting change, and really building your life from a solid foundation. So I share this story with you as an example that some of even though we might have some great things going for us in life, if there's some part of us that feels unfulfilled, or if we're called to a deeper calling, we're not going to fully express our potential, or feel that deep fulfillment unless we are aligned to our life purpose, our mission, and our vision. And so through the course of this series, as we go forward, I'm going to be sharing some of the key principles to getting more clear with this, both at a conscious level and at a more expansive level. Think of the unconscious level as well. So when most people think about creating a change, most of us think about changing some habit, some behavior, and it can feel like we're on a hamster wheel, that we put all of this forward motion in, we're pretty good for a couple of days, and then maybe we lose momentum, life comes up, things take over, and then we fall off the wagon and lose motivation, lose momentum. So this has to do with some of the goals that we have over and over again. If we feel like we're trying to take action but not getting anywhere, it could be that we're not working at the appropriate level to actually solve the challenge that we're trying to overcome. And in not following through, we will be struggling to really create the life that we want to create. So as we go through this 4-part course, this webinar series, I'm going to give you kind of an overview of what we're going to cover. We're going to learn to look at the mind at deeper levels of how we operate. We're going to clarify your inner voice, the understanding of your core self. We're going to learn more about what makes you tick, and you're going to find your inner resources and reserves of energy and aliveness so that you can keep putting in the action that actually brings you success. And you're going to find greater contentment and happiness in every day, because this is the power of your mind to shift your perspective and shift your focus. And when you get your brain on board, life, health, happiness, it all gets easier. So here's what we'll cover as we go through the course. You're going to understand more of what makes you tick. You're going to learn about you on a really deep level. We're going to look at the layers of the mind, how we integrate change, and how to help that become an easier process for you and where you are in life. We're also going to clarify your inner voice, to know more about what you want and desire out of life. We're going to develop more self-awareness, paying attention to how we operate, and set up your mind for the positive things that you want it to do for you. So as we go through, I'm going to ask that you adopt the mind of a curious explorer. Be open to re-examining some of the things that you may have been taking for granted in life. Definitions about yourself or other people, judgments also about self or other people, even decisions that we've made. And as we explore further, we're going to see how the decisions that we've made about who we are, about how life works, can actually be the mental blocks, the mind traps that keep us stuck from really truly seeing possibility for ourselves. So as we go forward, just adopt that curious explorer mindset. Let's re-examine some of the things in life that you may have taken for granted and see how we can shift and adjust things to be working for you rather than against you. Now we also, if you do have an inner skeptic, recognize that the skeptic part of us simply wants to help us notice what's real. It wants us to recognize what's working. So if we give it that job to help us notice what's working so that we can do more of what's working, we can get the skeptic on board to really find what works for us. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to that question. What is working? How can I create more of what's working? And that'll keep you on a very positive track. We've been conditioned in so many ways to look outside of ourselves for the answers in our life. And some of these ways that we have defined ourselves is by outside opinions, judgments, past experiences. And this is how the brain works. In the brain, we have these cells that are linking up kind of with like a hand with many fingers. Now, kind of just a very fascinating trivia, one single nerve cell in the brain can have as many as 10,000 connections. Wow, that's a lot, right? Kind of mind-blowing. However, through the course of our life, our brain is linking up these cells one to another, kind of like hands and fingers, linking all of our brain. When we learn something new, the brain creates a chain or a pathway of these neural cells leading through with that thought or that habit. Now, over time, the nerve cells that wired together, the more that they're used, the more that pathway becomes strengthened until it becomes the default. The repetition increases the connections between these pathways, and repetition then creates habit. So out of the things that we have been thinking, feeling, doing, we now have a whole set of habits wired into the brain which are responsible for how we operate every day on a daily basis. In fact, I would say 90% or even more of what we do every day as a habit. We have habits in what we do, which are obvious. Stop smoking, overeating, those are the big ones people come to me for. But we also have habits in what we think and how we feel. Depression, anxiety, negative thinking, self-criticism, self-sabotage. These are habits wired into the brain. Now, if we can help the mind learn to rewire these habits in a more effective way, and that's part of what I'll be sharing with you as we go through. So keep in mind that your mind already has these things wired into the mind, into the back of the brain. We have habits in everything that we do. Routines, obvious habits about what we do, behaviors. We also have habits and routines. Chances are we go to the same path to work every morning. We have habits in food choices. When you go shopping, you probably put the same 20 items in your shopping cart. We have habits in our language patterns, habits in our conversations, even our relationships. So if we can get really clear about understanding these patterns that we're already operating from, we can find it easier to make those changes and to harness the mind for what we want to create. Now, we have habits in what we do, which are more obvious, but we also have habits in what we think and how we feel. And it's these thinking and feeling habits that really make the difference in our day-to-day experience. So our mind is programmed, and we call this programming, in understanding that our past experiences, our culture, environment, our parents' beliefs, our generational beliefs that we were surrounded by as we grew up, our judgments, labels, opinions, decisions, these are all what constitutes the programming in our mind. This is the input that we have taken on, especially through our formative years. And it's estimated that most of these beliefs and how we see ourselves and how we see life are programmed by the time we're 7. So that's why these things can be so sticky, is because it's old programming. Our mind has been repeating these things for a long time, even to the point where it's hardwired into our brain. Now it's really useful to understand the layers of the mind. So instead of spending our time running on the hamster wheel, trying to change habits or behaviors, if we look internally at the layers of the mind and understand how the mind is operating and what it's doing, we can then help it make a shift more quickly, more efficiently. So here's a good metaphor for understanding how the mind works. You can see the image of the iceberg, And there's a top portion of the iceberg that you see above the water. That top portion is like our conscious mind. We're aware of it. These are the thoughts that run through our mind day to day. And now you can see that just under the surface, we equate that with the subconscious mind. So this is where information that you use often or recently is stored in the access of the mind that's easy to retrieve. So a good example, think about your telephone number, where your car keys are. The stuff that we use often or recently, it's stored right below the surface. So now I want you to think about your 5th birthday. Do you remember your 5th birthday? Most people don't. And it's not that it didn't happen, it's still there. It's just stored in a deeper part of the mind that we call the unconscious. It's part of the archives. And this is kind of how the brain works, that over time it kind of lays our memories one on top of the other so that the oldest memories are kind of at the bottom and the ones that are newer are easier to retrieve. Because we're not using them all the time, the mind just kind of stuffs them down, and it's efficiency. We don't have to remember all of that. However, it's the experiences that we had, as I mentioned, the programming piece. Our brain has been wired by the time that we are 7, and we have created some of the main perspectives that we experience life from. So when we look at the layers of the mind, at the conscious level, we might want to make a change. However, if the unconscious level is operating something differently, this is where we experience things like lack of motivation, procrastination, self-sabotage, because our conscious mind is picking the goal, but our unconscious mind is still running old programs. So these are the things that we can help the mind update and change, fortunately. Now, to understand a little more about how we create change, and especially how we create lasting change, a really good model comes from Gregory Bateson. He was a psychologist, and he discovered that there were these different layers in creating change that he could help clients create. And what he identified is kind of a hierarchy, and you can see this pyramid set up in layers here. When most people think about creating a change, they often look at the very base of this pyramid. They're often looking at environment and behaviors. So an example of making a change in environment would be, for instance, if we have a messy house and we want to clean the house, we might take the time to clean up the house, or changing the environment, you might paint a wall in your house. But then the behaviors are the things that got your house messy in the first place. So if you start changing a behavior, you'll be able to keep your house more clean. For example, doing the dishes right after your meals. That's a behavior that can support having a clean environment. So now, a higher level than behavior is to learn a new capability. So in the metaphor of keeping the house clean, maybe you take a class on organization and creating organization in your house. So then you take the class, you have this new skill, and maybe then you create, more places for things, better storage, and then that helps you stay in those behaviors and help you clean the house. Now, even above capability, there's another level, and this level is beliefs. Now, I've also put blocks here because these are where our mind gets stuck in these mental blocks. So a belief is a phrase that sounds like the rules of life. It sounds like how life operates. An example that would have to do maybe with a house is it's so hard to keep things clean. So how these work, they're often like self-fulfilling prophecies. If I believe this perspective is true, then that's what my mind sorts for, that's what it notices, and ultimately that's what it focuses on, and that becomes my experience. So if I have this belief, the house is hard to keep clean, I have this experience, I'm noticing the ways that it's hard to keep clean, I focus on that, and it becomes hard to keep clean. Or that's what I experience, that's what I think my experience is. Because the mind discounts the ways that it's easy. So if we have one of these beliefs operating in the background of our mind, they almost act like self-fulfilling prophecies. Let me give you another example here. For instance, if you have this idea, nobody wants to talk to me, I'm not an interesting person, and you go to a party or some gathering, and you're not feeling, because you have that belief, you're not feeling really outgoing. And so you kind of, stand by the lamp or kind of hang out in the background. You don't introduce yourself to other people. And maybe you have some short conversations, but you can see people, passing you by. And then at the end of the night, the mind says, see, I told you, nobody wants to talk to me. I'm not interesting enough. Which isn't true. However, because of that thought, that belief, our body language becomes more withdrawn. We're less outgoing. We don't put in the extra effort, and it reinforces itself. So these beliefs are very powerful in how they direct our life, and they act like self-fulfilling prophecies. So you want to pay attention to those ideas, and these are the decisions that we have about ourselves, about life, about what's possible for us. And once again, it's kind of there, it's part of the filters of the mind in how we see and experience life. A powerful level to change. Now, even above that is the level of values. So if I have a high value on cleanliness, my mind prioritizes that, and my beliefs, capabilities, behaviors match up according to this value. So if I have a high value on cleanliness, I'm going to prioritize that and naturally follow through on things like putting away my clothes and cleaning the dishes. Once again, using this metaphor of keeping house clean, right? Now, even above values is level of identity. Identity, how we see ourselves. There are different ways that we've made decisions about ourselves, who we are, and what's possible for us. Once again, remember that history, most of that's wired in by the time we're 7. So if we can change, create and incorporate a new change at the level of how we see ourselves, we can create an expansive, profound change all the way down the levels of the system. And then even higher still is the level of system. So in the house metaphor, this could include your family. This could also include kind of spiritual level type of things, who beyond you. So through the course of the Discover Design You, we're really going to pay attention to the identity level change that we can integrate to set your mind up for better ways of living, feeling, experiencing health, happiness, and success. So here's how this 7 levels of change stacks up to layers of the mind. And I think this is useful to look at this side by side. So on the left-hand side, we have the image of the iceberg. And then on the right-hand side, we have these levels of the mind. So what happens in these levels of change on the right-hand side, you can see that that's parallel to the top part of the iceberg, which is kind of our conscious mind. And we're aware of our environment and our behaviors, but we're not as aware of these deeper levels. We're not as aware of maybe the capabilities, the beliefs, the values, and especially identity. So just pay attention to this. This is a great model for understanding what we're going to cover as we move forward, and also how to look deeper at helping your mind support the change that you're wanting to create in life. So if you do want to move something forward, the very first level is to create an environmental change. But if you look deeper, you can start changing at a deeper level, behaviors, capabilities, beliefs, or even identity will support you even more in creating the lasting change that you'd like to make. So this really comes down to everything in life has to do with how we see ourselves. It's so key, it's so foundational to the choices that we make, to what we think is possible for us and what we're willing to put our action into. If we don't think something is possible for us, are we going to take the action to achieve it? No, we're not. So part of this awareness of how we see ourselves and updating that programming is so important to really creating the shift in your life that you want to have. So keep this in mind. You can also look at, what do you do when you see yourself in the mirror? What does your mind go into? I had one client that came to me, and she said she was struggling with depression. She wanted to find a new job. She had a great resume. She had a great work history. And she said, I just don't know how to get myself motivated. And I said, well, what are you doing? Kind of walk me through your day. Tell me what you're doing as you're getting ready for your day, and notice what you're thinking and feeling. And she says, oh, well, I get up in the morning, I feel pretty good, I'm excited for my day, I think about what I want to accomplish, and then I get up, I have a good breakfast. She'd been working on healthy eating, so she was doing very good with that. She's like, yeah, and I still feel pretty good, and then I go to get dressed, and then she thought about it, she's like, and I start putting my makeup on, and as I'm putting my makeup on, I can tell my mind is picking out everything I don't like about myself. So what happens, she had this habit that when she saw herself in the mirror, her mind started to go into all that's wrong, picking apart herself, her flaws. And then by the time she actually put her clothes on and got ready to go out the door, she felt defeated. She felt like she just didn't want to do it. So that's how much our mind can be responsible for what our motivation, our focus, how we're thinking, how we're feeling. And how we think and feel has everything to do with how we show up and what opportunities we go for and what we do or don't do. So pay attention to this part, pay attention to that. And in fact, there is a hypnosis process that I've developed specifically to update how we see ourselves, how we see what's possible for us, and to also change the inner critic, as well as fear of failure and fear of success. So you're going to see that in the pages, in the page as the hypnosis process that goes with this lesson. Because life gets so different. If we can change that inner critic from, you're this, you're that. Mine used to call me stupid, okay, I'll admit it. But it can change. Your mind can learn, and it can learn very quickly. So we just have to help it learn in the way that it knows how to create change. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go. So yes, life gets easier when you get your brain on board. And pay attention to what your mind is doing in the background. So these, as you will hear or think of these reoccurring thoughts and feelings, and these are clues as to what your mind is running in that program, and also what you can change to help your mind be more effective, more supportive, and really help you focus where you want to go. Now, thinking of this, understanding what the mind is doing is to understand the power of words. Our words direct our mind and our focus. And there is a part of the mind that translates words into mental pictures. So many times when clients come in, I hear them using language that is not supportive of what they really want. So really pay attention to and start changing over your words to be more clear with where you want to go. The unconscious mind is always listening. Now, when we think about the unconscious, a good analogy of this is to think about the unconscious as your expanded mind. It houses all your past history, the archives, all the memories, even the beliefs and the feelings that you've had in the past are all buried there or stored there in the unconscious. So another good way of thinking of this is to imagine that we were to turn the lights out in this room and bring in a flashlight, and everywhere that that smaller flashlight light shines is kind of like our conscious awareness. We can only see a smaller portion at any given moment, but our unconscious mind actually includes the whole room. Our mind, for efficiency, has to only focus on a smaller piece at any given time. However, the unconscious can be running these automatic programs, these automatic filters in the back of the mind. So as we talk about updating what the unconscious is doing in the background, it's really always listening. It's always active. Just what we're aware of in our day-to-day is our mind chatter at the conscious level. So even though we know something at the conscious level, the unconscious mind may still be running an old program. So, oh, I know I have a degree, I'm accomplished, I'm a good person, I do deserve good things. But if the unconscious mind is running an old program, you can, even though you have all these degrees, you can still feel, I still don't feel good enough, I still don't feel worthy. So that's exactly what this hypnosis process is going to help you with. So coming back to the power of words, be more clear with the words that you use and how they affect your mind and your focus. So think of these phrases. These are common ones that I hear. I'm not going to eat sugar anymore. Have you tried this one before? So what happens when you say this declaration? I'm not going to eat sugar anymore. We start noticing it everywhere, right? We see the donuts at work, the cookies at we think about the cookies next door to where we work. And by the time we get home, we've kind of worn ourselves out of trying to pass up these things. And we get home and we hear the ice cream calling us from the freezer. I'm here, come eat me. So we can look at part of how this works is how our mind interprets language. Remember this, there is a part of the mind that translates words into mental pictures. So consciously, we understand don't. However, our unconscious mind translates words into mental pictures. So I'm going to tell you not to do something. Don't. You can agree not to do something, right? You know the word don't means. Don't think of a yellow butterfly because as you do, it's going to turn blue and fly right out the door. What did your mind do? It pictured exactly that. Your mind has to picture it in order to understand don't. So when we come to these common goals that people have, notice how they affect your mind and your focus. I'm not going to eat sugar anymore. What does that tell your mind to picture? Eating sugar. It's everywhere, right? What about this phrase? I want to lose 20 pounds. What does that tune your mind and attention to? Oh, it's the 20 pounds that you don't want. You might feel heaviness. It might feel hard. You're reminded of all the times that you tried that before. Or this is another one. It sounds very clear. I want to get out of debt. What does that tune your mind and attention to? Oh, the heaviness of debt. Maybe even embarrassment of debt. And your mind goes into the negative emotion of it. So if you can choose positive phrases that direct your attention even better, it will help you stay on track even more. So let's go ahead and look at these phrases. What's a better way of saying, I'm not going to eat sugar anymore. What's a better way to tune your mind and your attention? What about saying, I'm going to eat healthy fruits and vegetables? Eat healthier, eat better quality foods. And when you say that phrase, I'm going to eat healthy fruits and vegetables, what does that tune your mind to? You're getting pictures of healthy options. Starts focusing your mind to notice it more, to focus on it more. So what about this one? I want to lose 20 pounds. Well, instead of that, what about I am slimming down to my healthy weight number? This is another trick that we use with helping the mind get the number, because to lose, think of this word lose. How many things have you lost that you felt really good about losing? Not that many, right? And how many times have you lost something and then spent a ton of time trying to go and find it again? So these are the things that your unconscious mind is sorting through when you're using this kind of language. So instead of, I want to lose 20 pounds, what about, I am becoming my healthy weight number? Doesn't that sound better? Try it on for a moment. I am becoming my healthy weight number. It feels better. You might feel a greater sense of, oh, I can do this. Well, maybe a little more motivation. Or maybe the healthy weight numbers a little further from where you are now. You can say, I am becoming healthier and healthier. That's a little bit of hypnotic language, helping the mind build on itself toward a greater level. Now the other one, I want to get out of debt. What's a better way to tune the mind and attention in that sense of the goal? It might sound like, I am generating extra money. I am creating surplus money. I am adding to my savings. You see how it has a more positive focus? And as we create that positive focus, we have more positive feelings. And as we have more positive feelings, we become more prepared to take action. Think of motivation. It's a feeling. We feel motivated or we don't feel motivated. So your feelings are important because they are the things that drive your life. All right, so when we think about creating a great life, think of it that a great life is really made from the quality of your moments. The quality of your life is only as good as the quality of your moments. Now, this also means that to create a better life, we just have to be more aware of what we're doing moment by moment, step by step, minute by minute, hour by hour. And we can also train the brain to get on board with more positive habits and patterns that work for us. So the quality of your life is only as good as the quality of your moments. Catch the good ones, right? Okay, so for this segment, I want to share with you an NLP anchoring tool. Now, NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and this set of applied psychology comes from psychology researchers Dr. John Grinder and Richard Bandler in the 1970s at Berkeley, and they really wanted to study what are models of successful people. They really wanted to look at what's working, how can we understand what's working, and how can we break down and teach what works to other people. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it's a field of applied psychology developed by researchers John Grinder and Richard Bandler in the 1970s at Berkeley. And they really wanted to study what works so that we can break it down and teach it to other people. Specifically, they studied key therapists of the time that were getting great results with their clients. And they said, these people must be doing something specifically that we can break it down and teach to others. So they studied Virginia Satir, Milton Erickson, and key people that were really getting great change with their clients. So what they actually uncovered or created was a set of building blocks, understanding our internal structure of how we perceive life, which is the birthplace of our experience in day to day. And from that skill set, they also developed tools and skills that we can tap into the brain's own coding system to then help it make an update and a change. So one really great way is to, a very simple exercise, but very profound, is the NLP anchoring tool. So anchoring is, I'll just walk you through this process and then we can talk about how this process worked. But this process helps you access your positive history to bring it forward, create more positive states of being, and then from those positive states, it becomes easier to take the actions you want to take. So this NLP tool can be really useful for stress relief, confidence, motivation, focus, just about any state of mind that you want to tap into so that you can do something better. It's a great tool for that. So the first step is to think about a memory where you felt. And now I've left this open in the sheet here because you could put any kind of feeling state into that format. However, think of a time, so for the purposes of this, let's go with happiness. Because when we're happy, we're more effective, we're taking action that we want to take in life. So think of a time and place that you felt happiness. Now you want to make sure that that memory is very specific. So rather than summer at grandma's, it's more like a specific day, celebration, or event. And you want to get kind of a snapshot. What are the visuals that were around you at the time? Where were you? What was the context, the environment? Who else was there with you? Now you want to make sure that the memory that you choose is a very clear memory. So it doesn't have, for instance, maybe, you know, that person that was with you, maybe they're not a friend anymore. Maybe they're not, maybe something bad happened in the relationship, or maybe you got divorced. So try not to use one that has that mixed emotion with it. Try to get a very clear memory. Get a very clear memory. And take a moment to think about what that is for you. Okay, and get clear about what was going on around you. You want to give yourself a sense of some of the things that can help you step into and relive that memory. Okay, so now I'm going to guide you through this, and I'm going to have you touch maybe your first knuckle, your first finger to your first knuckle. Anchoring is a way of telling the brain, it's like telling the brain to stay connected with that memory and that state. So we're going to just touch the first finger to the first knuckle there as a way of telling the brain to stay connected with that feeling. So go ahead and you can do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed. Go ahead and step back into that time and place and allow yourself to be there as if you're there now. Hear what you were hearing, see what you were seeing, feel what you were feeling, and noticing that feeling of happiness washing through you. Let it wash from the top of your head to the bottoms of your feet, even until it fills up the space around you with that happiness. And as you touch that knuckle, holding it 1, 2, 3. And we're going to add just a little bit here. So in your mind's eye, imagine a dial in your mind's eye. And as you imagine turning up that dial, as you do, this feeling gets stronger and stronger, bringing it all the way up to an 8 or 9 on a scale of 1 to 10. And when it gets almost about an 8 or 9, just to about that number, Yep. And if this feeling had a color, what color would it be? Very good. So just come back to your everyday awareness. Now, setting up an anchor also gives you a quick and easy way to get back into that positive state of mind very quickly. So we did a touch cue. So if you're touching your first finger to your knuckle. Now I also gave you a couple more cues. One is a color. You imagine that feeling washing through you, filling up the space around you into a bubble. So as you think about that color, that tells the mind to access that feeling state, and it'll bring that positive feeling back to you quickly. So anchoring is really good for times and places that you want to boost. In fact, I teach the anchoring tool. We set up a pretty dynamic anchor. We'll do 3 feeling states and kind of string them together. And we'll do that for things like public speaking, being more confident, the sales process, anywhere that you want to tap into those really positive states of mind. So go ahead and play with the anchor this week. That's a quick and easy way to start managing your mind in a more effective way. Okay, so for the segment, I have posted the hypnosis segment, Angelize an Inspired Self-Image. Now, we mentioned this a little earlier, that as I've worked with people over the last 12 years, there are really some common themes underlying the problems that people are facing in life. So whether it's lack of money, not having a job that you want, not having a positive relationship, feeling like life is passing you by, or not really being expressive of your full potential, all of these things come back to this awareness of how we see ourselves, our identity level. If we don't feel like consciously, I might know I have, a lot of degrees, I have a lot of stuff, but if I don't feel that at the feeling level, I'm not going to be taking the action to set myself up for where I want to go. I won't be taking the opportunities. I won't be putting that action forward. So this hypnosis segment that I've developed, Angelize an Inspired Self-Image, Part 1, it can help the unconscious mind, those layers of the mind, even the younger layers of the mind, increase the awareness of knowing your worth and value, boosting your confidence, tapping into personal power, and it's designed to change fear of failure as well as fear of success, and also change that inner critic to become your ally. Plus, listening and updating at this deeper level, you'll find greater well-being in your everyday life. So the next part of this, go ahead and listen to the hypnosis process, Angelize an Inspired Self-Image, Part 1, and go ahead and post in the Facebook group, the Brain Trainers Mind Mastery group. And you can post with what you notice, or if you have questions that are there, you can add that in the post. And here's your actions for this week. Use the anchors. So in the hypnosis process that I've created, there are some key visuals and images that will help your unconscious mind update and be more effective, but also help you tap into those positive states more quickly. There's a jewel, a bicycle, and a green plus. These will be more, you'll understand this once you go through the process. Actions this week, pay attention to your self-talk and change it up. If this process is designed to change the inner critic, sometimes it totally changes, which is great. Sometimes it needs a little bit of a reminder. So if the inner critic doesn't change after this hypnosis session, picture that green plus, that green addition sign in your mind, and speak directly to that part of your mind. Hey, I thought you were supposed to help me out with this. What can you say that's useful here? Okay, so you might have to train that part a little bit, but it should catch on. As I mentioned before, your unconscious mind is very quick at learning and adapting. Now, this is a great exercise, is to journal 5 to 20 minutes, a free write daily. What I love about journaling is, one, we have so many thoughts going on in the background of our mind that we don't necessarily recognize them or notice them. They're just happening so fast, we don't notice them. So the journaling process, even if it's 5 minutes, and the idea is just to start writing. Whatever's going on in your mind, just write it down, get it on paper. It does a couple of things. One, it helps you slow down these thoughts to really recognize what your mind is doing in the background. So as you start doing this free write, you'll start to notice some patterns. We'll talk more about changing patterns as we go forward. Now, the second thing that I really like about the journaling process is, for those of us who haven't been listening to our own inner world, our own inner voice, it helps us start to become aware of these underlying things that we think, our own opinions, and our own wants and needs that are there and pushing us into our next level of life. So we might be hearing our own advice, but sometimes our own voice gets covered up by all of the busyness of life, the to-dos, the tasking, taking care of other people. And so if you can give yourself a little bit of time that you can recognize what's going on in the back of your mind, that you can start developing a relationship with your own inner voice, which is key to really leading your self-directed life and creating that life that's amazing for you. Now, here's another task that is great, is ask 3 to 5 people, what are my strengths, talents, and gifts? Now, of course, you want to ask people who are positive and who are going to really give you some good advice. So don't go asking the people that are critical to help you identify your strengths, talents, and gifts. Focus on the real connections, people that really know you and that really care about you, that can give you some good feedback. Because sometimes we're so much in our own world that we don't even recognize our gifts and talents and strengths, and another person's view can help start bringing that awareness forward. All right, have a great week. Listen to the hypnosis process, Angel Eyes and Inspired Self-Image, and repeat it several times throughout the week, as the repetition helps your unconscious mind take that updates into deeper and deeper levels of the mind. And it helps your mind create new habits and patterns, which is what you want, right? To help you create your amazing life and move forward. Also, pay attention to even the smallest of changes, as your mind will continue to build on those changes, helping you to move forward and creating the results that you want. All right. Thank you for participating, and we'll see you in the Facebook group, the Brain Trainers Mind Mastery System. See you there.